Welcome to PiqueAI. Today, we are meeting with someone who has a deep and extensive knowledge in technology consulting, mathematics research, and a keen interest in AI. He's a leader who has spent many years consulting with organizations such as McKinsey & Co., who blends deep expertise with a passion for innovation. Introducing Dr. Rishni Ratnam, CEO of MXA Consulting and visionary founder of First Thing AI. Welcome, Rishni.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I think one of the things that I like to say about myself, and maybe this is a little bit different, is that I probably had 4 or 5 different careers now, and hopefully I'm not that old. But those careers have taken me through, I think, all of the major disciplines that are needed for innovation. So I've spent time working hands-on as a human-centered designer. I've spent time hands-on working as a software developer, a data scientist. I've done a few startups and done this whole sort of lean startup process. I've worked in corporate through sort of management consulting at McKinsey. So I think I have a very broad understanding of many different disciplines. And I'm a big believer in the sort of Dunning-Kruger effect, meaning I have a deeper awareness of my own incompetence across most of these disciplines. And I think that's actually a great skill to have in a leader. And I definitely that probably sort of sums me up as generally incompetent.
It can't be incompetent with such a amazing grassroots growth through the technology journey. So many people kind of spend 2 years as a manager somewhere and then all of a sudden become a CEO because they bought it or found it or somebody gave it to them. I feel like your journey is a far more respected journey. So thank you so much for joining us here today. From your perspective, when you refer to AI, what is it that you mean?
You know, AI is not something that there's an agreed definition. I've heard so many people say different ones. What I mean specifically, it's machines that have judgment. Because especially when I look at the evolution of AI over the past, say, 10 years even, you go back 10 years and it was an amazing thing that we had AlphaGo that could beat humans at what I would call a mathematically complex problem. But that's not what people would call a judgment-related set of calls. It's sort of an objective calls, maybe statistically valid calls. Now what we're seeing and what I think of as artificial intelligence is how do you make calls in ambiguous situations or in situations where emotion gets involved or nuances of language and context. And I think of AI, I think about that. How do you make decisions in those contexts? How do you communicate in those contexts? So that's what sort of comes to me. And that speaks to me more than some of the other things that I see as definitions.
Interesting. Where in the context of judgment, can you tell us a little bit more about your thinking and your sense of what judgment means in those contexts? Because I'm kind of, one of the things that jumps out at me is, for me, AI, I like to see evolution of learning, not just algorithms that have been improved and top 10. So that's why like that idea of judgment, I think that is very interesting. So yeah, are you able to talk us a bit more through that?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like business applications of some of this stuff, until now, a lot of AI was either kind of like machine learning applied to what is effectively like a mathematical problem, like a predictive maintenance kind of problem or something like that. Or maybe it's like RPA, which isn't really intelligent, robotic process automation. It's more about sort of mimicking human processes. But none of those things are able to handle the real ambiguity that we face in the world. But what we see now over the last few years is now you can throw an email at something and who knows what human has written in that email. It could say almost anything, but actually a large language model is able to interpret it and understand it to some degree, whatever understand means, and sort of take action in a way that you could have never imagined before. And even, relate to people in a way that was completely unthinkable before. Like if you've used ChatGPT and actually just had a conversation. I was bored at home the other day. My partner was out and I'm like, I just want to chat with something. I just popped open ChatGPT and I just started talking about the weekend plans and cars and all the rest of it. And just, I know it's a simulation of empathy, but kind of in some sense, all empathy is a simulation of empathy. To that extent, like there's something really new and different here. And there's a judgment that goes on when I'm choosing to empathize with someone. In what way do I do it and how do I do it? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So this is the sort of things that I sort of mean.
Interesting. You called out a couple of good points that I'd like to touch on a bit more. RPA. I feel like RPA when I hear RPA, I immediately match that to when Mark Benioff at Salesforce starts talking about AI agents. When he explains what we need to be an agent-first organization or something like that, to me, that just sounds like RPA, and I don't hear any difference. And I agree with you that RPA, that's not AI. That's a really great set of algorithms that are probably updated pretty regularly, which is amazing. Do you have any thoughts in that space?
I mean, RPA is RPA, and it's a nice technology that's delivered a lot of value, but it has limits because it can't handle ambiguity, at least to the same extent. Agents is, of course, the buzzword of 2025. The number of LinkedIn posts, whatever, that we all saw about 2025 being the year of agents, they're broadly misunderstood. Most agents that exist, at least as of February 2025, so we have to update this on a weekly or monthly basis, absolutely, are just large language models that are wrapped and looped.
Yep.
That's it. It's a large language model. You put a bit of text in, it takes an action, which is calling a function or spitting out a bit of text, and then you do something, you put it back in, and it just loops. It's just a loop. It's not intelligent. It's not proactive. Where I think agents are going to get interesting over the next 12 months is not about an individual agent, but people talk about multi-agent systems. The thing I find interesting about multi-agent systems is now you start to get real complexity in a system, in the same way that as soon as you've got 2 or 3 people working together, you have a completely different level of complexity and potential. So that's kind of going to be interesting in 2025. But make no mistake, this is just large language models in a loop. There's nothing.
Completely agree. Have you tried a product called Claude by any chance? The biggest difference between ChatGPT of old, contextually old, and when I really reveled in ChatGPT was when I could speak with it. That's when I really enjoyed being able to have as you said, a semi-empathic conversation. And Claude is a model that is totally designed for empathy and sympathy, and yet you can't speak to it. So I was very interested to ask you your experience.
So I've got an answer to that, plus an anecdote, which you'll find amusing. So naturally, I have ChatGPT and advanced voice mode, and it was about 2 weeks ago, maybe so. I was sitting on the couch with my partner, and we were planning a trip to Europe. And of course, the way that you plan everything nowadays is you pop open ChatGPT advanced voice mode and you talk to it, and you work through your travel itinerary. And what was funny is while we were having this conversation with it, or rather, I was talking primarily to it, my partner, who's sitting on the couch next to me, she coughed. And mid-conversation with ChatGPT, while we're talking about going to Spain and the rest of it, it stopped and went, "Are you all right?"
Wow.
So it heard the cough from another speaker, understood that was a cough, understood that is, a moment of sort of minor trauma, if you like, for a human.
Yeah.
And went, "Hey, you are..."
I'm impressed.
And like the two of us on the couch were like, "Holy moly, I can't believe that just happened."
That's
Wow. Even explaining to someone 12 months ago that this would be possible, people will be like, "There's no."
no.
Anyway, your question about Claude. So Claude is interesting. So I do a lot of programming with large language models. And one of the things that I found doing a use case for a bank about 6 months ago was that when we were using OpenAI's models, and this particular use case was around best practices. When you used OpenAI's models, the user was easily able to tell the model, "I can't be bothered doing that right now." And you just say that once or twice, and ChatGPT, or at the time it was 4.0, the model would just go, "Okay, fine, we'll do it later." Whereas Claude, with the same prompts that say, "We're here after best practices, don't let the user sort of defer," would not allow the user. We'll move on. And I had a few examples that I should have showed my client where I was like, "Can I just do this tomorrow?" And Claude will be like, "No, we're here for best practices. Do this now. Can I just like save the bad one and come back tomorrow?" Claude is like, "No." And the assumption that I had from this is that a lot of OpenAI's training is from reinforcement learning with human feedback. Those models are optimized to make humans happy, which is why when you tell it, "I don't want to do this anymore," it will actually just go fine. Whereas I don't think Anthropic used quite as much human feedback in some of their training, at least of those models from a while ago, which meant that the model was more likely to obey the system instructions of, "We're doing best practices."
Oh, you're at a guidance as opposed to human empathy.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
So that's an interesting example.
Yeah. it's a disciplinary and it's also empathic. It's a great combination. One of the things that I'm really interested also from given your experience, particularly commercial and personal, do you feel that your meaning of AI, which you called out was focused around judgment, which I love, do you feel that your meaning differs from the meaning that other people mean when they refer to AI?
I think so very much. The common definitions that I've seen around AI usually evolve around sort of thinking or acting like a human. There's two reasons why I don't like that definition and I think it's wrong. Probably the most interesting reason why I think that that's wrong is that puts too many limitations. Because humans are so limited and flawed. And, to bring this to life, if you think about the Turing test, which is this idea of if I put something which could be an AI or a human behind a screen and have it talk to you, can you tell that it's a human or an AI? We're already at the point where an AI would have to deliberately dumb itself down in order to appear human. And you think about it, you just ask it a complex question. Most humans would take 20 minutes to sort of figure it out. The AI could answer it instantly. You as the human judge would instantly know that's an AI just by how fast it answered the hard question. So the AI has to go, right, I'm in a Turing test scenario. My point being this definition of thinking and acting human is actually too limiting. AI is actually too smart for that. So that's partly why I disagree with that definition. The second reason why I disagree with the definition is the history of the Turing tests or ways of measuring AI is the history of people setting a bar, AI beating it, and then people saying, oh, but that's not the real bar. The bar constantly moves.
Yeah.
AI, humans were so uniquely special. Only we could do this thing. Give it a month, AI can do that. Oh, I didn't mean that. I meant this other thing. And this is the history of people trying to decide what is AI. So I think all of these definitions are wrong. The thing I like about judgment is that I didn't say how much judgment. I didn't say human-like. No. I just sort of talked about judgment. And so by having it uncapped like that and to have it being something that we know is fundamentally difficult to decide what is the right thing to do in a situation for whatever right means, that I think we can agree is something that's advantageous or
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's an awesome segue to my next question. And that is, what are some of the areas of AI that you are most excited or engaged by?
I mean, I suppose there's sort of personal and there's sort of professional. In the professional context, I mean, the ability for AI to enhance me as a professional, to help me think and to help me come up with insights, to help me solve problems. Because of its ability to deal with language and judgment, this is something that people couldn't have imagined could be done 2 years ago. But now I couldn't live without 4.0 because of the way that it helps me think about things. Previously, I would have needed a team of people to think about these things. So what I'm really excited about is the way that it can help us think. On a personal level, I think there's that, but there's also more. I think that there's huge opportunity for AI to solve some of the societal problems we have around loneliness and connection. If we design it right, so it isn't a replacement to humans, but it is a way to help us connect better with each other, then there's a whole lot of potential there, sort of bring us closer together. All of these things actually come together to a point which in some sense scares me, which is it's not going to take very long, probably by 2035 to 2040, for us to have superintelligence. As a species, the only way for us to survive in that context is really brain-machine interfaces. We need to become part of AI. It needs to become part of us.
Is that like the neural links that...
For example, this is exactly why Musk is investing in Neuralink. I mean, if you think about it, without brain-machine interfaces, we become redundant because machines will be, within the next 10 to 15 years, smarter and better than us at basically everything.
Yeah.
So the only way for us to make sense in that environment, especially a capitalist kind of environment like this, is if we are part of that intelligence. So it sort of frightens me.
Yeah, interesting. Sense. That might lead well to this next question, which we're vibing on this question path. I'm liking that. What's the most unexpected way AI has affected or impacted you?
I mean, that's a hard question. I don't think I have been impacted in any unexpected ways.
Oh.
Mostly because I've been following this for a long time. I first AI or really understood where we are going with AI when I read The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil back in 2007. And at the time I was doing my math PhD, and I pivoted my career from mathematics research into technology the instant I read that book, because Ray laid out that by 2040, we were going to have superintelligence. And it became obvious to me, therefore, if you're not in technology and not driving that agenda, then how are you going to contribute in that context? And when you read that book and the books that were sort of out at the time, so similar, all of this stuff that we're seeing now is kind of laid out in a path. So none of it sort of really surprises me. And it's funny, I remember I joined McKinsey in 2017. At the same time as I joined, or as I was interviewing for McKinsey, I was interviewing for Palantir.
Oh, wow.
Who is just probably one of the best at sort of human intelligence augmentation companies that I've sort of seen. But I remember talking to them in my 6th interview, and they asked me, like, interview.
That's interrogation.
Yes, it was intense.
And they didn't have an AI run it for you?
Well, back then, this is 2016, so it was early.
They're still working on that model.
Still working on that one. They asked me, like, where you think this is going? And it was funny. I outlined at the time ChatGPT. Actually said, personal assistants that can talk to you in natural language and understand, solve basic tasks, like all these sorts of things. And I remember walking out of that interview and thinking, oh, it's a bit of a naff answer. No one's going to sort of value that sort of thing. And then when ChatGPT here, I was like, hey, that's what I was talking about. Was me. Because it's not my ideas. This was me sort of research, reading Ray Kurzweil stuff and a whole bunch of other things, and kind of seeing that that's clearly where it's kind of going to go.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so I was really just, combinatorially bringing together different ideas. None of these ideas are really mine.
No, that's an awesome example. And I feel that there's definitely a lot of opportunity in the hiring space for AIs to assist, because 6 interviews is very intense.
I had 5 for McKinsey, by the way. So,
there we go.
So the Palantir beat number 1. Actually, maybe one point to add about unexpected. I think the thing that is unexpected is the speed of innovation. Even a mathematician like me who understands quite deeply what an exponential curve is, and this whole notion of sort of Moore's law and the exponential increase of sort of information technologies. Even for me, I'm still human, so my brain is programmed to think linearly.
Yeah.
So the pace of innovation I can still wake up some mornings and be quite frightened about just the speed of releases and maybe advancement of the model. Even I'm just so blown away by the fact that I got O3 Mini maybe a week ago. This is their cheap, fast model, and it's better than O1 by a long shot. And it's so just in just a short period of time, we're like, oh, factor of 10 cheaper, way faster. You just have this.
X10, Moore's law is a little. When you said Moore's law, I was like, I can't remember what the newer vernacular for that is, but I'm sure it's in the space of X10.
Kurzweil uses the term law of accelerating returns, which is, there we go, kind of like Moore's law extended to information technologies more broadly.
Yeah.
And the fact that almost everything is going to become an information technology and therefore subject to the exponential sort of growth.
One of the really interesting things you said there was, one, during your mathematics research, you decided that you almost needed to pivot into the technology space so that you can be part of influencing it into the future. What are some of the examples of what you've done in, say, the last few years where you've been able to deliver on that pivot for yourself?
The first thing I did was back in 2014, 15, actually start building models myself.
That's
I always feel, now as a technologist, maybe not at the time, but now as a technologist, I feel that in order to really understand technology, you need to have actually played with it. I don't think you can really understand and influence the world in technology by reading about it on PowerPoint decks or TechCrunch articles. You actually have to get your hands dirty. Nothing is a substitute for understanding how hard some of this stuff is in real practice. So back in 2014, 2015, I started building neural nets. Back then, you would have to do it by hand. I'm going to lay down the layers, and here are the number of neurons in each layer, and I'm going to decide how they're connected, and it's like really complex. And then running the data science pipelines. So that was the first sort of step into it for me, and really kind of what got me hooked. And that was the time of AlphaGo. So it was very buzzy about AI even back then. I do kick myself for not buying NVIDIA shares, because even back then, like the thing to do as a data scientist was to go out and buy the best Alienware gaming machine you could, with the biggest NVIDIA GPUs, because we were all training models on our own GPU. And, you know, in hindsight, the horse, I should have bought NVIDIA shares.
If it helps at all, I sold out way too early. I only doubled my money and I felt good about myself. Clearly, I was massively wrong because it's triple as
What could you say?
These are some of the things that maybe A, you pivoted, which is fantastic. B, moved into this direction. What have been some of the more positive experiences as a result of the pivot in relation to AI?
I think that the thing that I enjoy is that I can advise people now on AI from a perspective of sort of knowledge and experience. I get a lot out of being able to help people from an informed perspective. And the reason why I kind of enjoy that, and part of the reason I got into this, I feel that modern technologists have a moral obligation to society as we drive these technologies. One of my many things that I did is I spent some time as the CEO of a subsidiary of one of the Australian Group of 8 universities, looking at sort of the future of work and how the education systems should help people. And one of the things that the research says is that technology creates job growth. So even in the context of AI being able to do all of these things that humans can now do, we should have more jobs. There should be more employment. That's nice in theory. What the research actually says is there's net job growth, meaning there's a huge drop of some jobs and an even bigger increase in other jobs. If that change occurs over a 20-year period or 30 years, like the invention of the internet, humans can retrain themselves and handle it. But what about if that change occurs over a 5-year period? Because we're on an exponential curve, that 20-year thing of the internet is now 5 years of AI, and whatever is brain-machine interfaces is going to be 1 year. So there's a moral obligation of technologists who are putting this stuff in. How are we going to help people deal with this down up? And if corporations are profiting off this, how are we going to help them contribute to the solution and not the problem? It's not sufficient to say, I'm going to get rid of all of these people and make my company more efficient. You have a moral obligation to help those people. I wish I could say the government should do this, and they should, but government moves so slow and the 5-year time span is going to be too short for governments. So private sector people have to step up. And that to me is the positive impact.
I think there's a lot to be said for a space where organizations that are specifically picking financial changes to their organization, minimizing overheads, resulting in insanely massive profits. If part of that journey is that they're going to move some people out of their organization, I think it's really important that they do a lot of steps along the lines that you're saying. I was really pleased when Mark Benioff called out at Davos that he's absolutely looking to have a lot of his staff no longer doing what they're doing at the moment. However, he also made a point that his intent is to retrain a lot of those people to do different things that are more valuable in our new environment. And I think more CEOs, more organizations that are making stompingly massive profits could take a similar sort of journey. This would be very beneficial.
I think it's critical. And it's not just the CEOs. I mean, to be honest, the shareholders, many of whom are super funds and all these sorts of things, need to require that some of the savings are reinvested in those people. I consult to many large organizations here in Sydney. Everybody knows that the cost efficiencies are going to come from jobs out, but they talk publicly about growth. If you're really going to do that, you have to invest in the people and the retraining. We cannot rely on the government to do it. Not because they won't want to, they will just be too slow and this is too fast.
Oh, that's a really good point. Given the experiences that you've had so far, what would you like to see next with AI, whether it exists or not?
I mean, the very next step, what we need is actually AI in production.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone did a proof of concept over the past 12, 24 months. Every company has a litany of these things, which sort of show interesting stuff. And then everyone kind of got bogged down into how do we get this into production so it actually creates an impact at scale. Oddly, that's not an AI problem. The reason why we can't get things into production is a people problem and a legacy technology problem, and increasingly the latter more than the former. That for me is the next step. We have to solve some of these challenges of the inertia and the tech debt in order to be able to get these things actually working, and at the same time deal with the people who don't want to do things in a different way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I commented on a LinkedIn post recently that was asking, how much is tech debt going to slow down the advancement in AI in organizations? And my immediate response was, in my opinion, and I'm interested to hear your response to this, my opinion is it's much more about the lack of understanding of what AI is, how it can be used, and what will happen when an organization uses it. Because the people signing the documents and the financial approvals, I believe, are very much stuck in that space of, like you're saying, proof of concept, but unleashing that product into the market that's actually AI. And I'm not talking about, RPA that's pretending to be AI. Unleashing that product into the market, and then there could be consequences that are unknown, because we've all seen the best of the AIs that are out there, all, fundamental maths, can't do it sometimes. That's one of the areas. And I was interested in that dichotomy between the two, and you've tightly coupled them. And I think that's actually probably more the point. It's probably more the point.
They are, one of the things that I talk about outside of AI in part of sort of my tech consulting is the world has changed in 2025. And I think most of the leaders of large organizations haven't realized. If you go back even 10 years, technology was like a cost center that was over there. And the business who made money was the important thing. And IT was just an enabler. And what I'm trying to talk about now is that in 2025, there are literally no problems of scale that are solved without technology. There are none. So this whole notion that you have a business executive that knows nothing about technology is going to just decide the decisions, the future direction of a large enterprise, completely ignorant of all of the tech that is going to do this. That's a 2015 mindset. In 2025, I think that's crazy. The people who are making decisions must be literate of technology and business. There's no or anymore. So I agree with your point that the lack of literacy is a huge problem. It needs to be a deep level. And then now I link that to the tech debt by those people need to understand the legacy that they're dealing with when trying to make decisions about how to move the organization forwards. Because the tech debt problem is not a simple problem. It's highly complex. It's about how organizations connect to each other. It's about the obligations that you have with your existing customers. There's so many things that go into why tech debt is hard to shift. And if you don't have some literacy for that, how are you going to problem solve forwards?
Yeah.
Everyone can design an end state. Any executive can say, my strategic vision is to be X. The hard bit is like moving from A to B. It's not figuring out what B is.
On the movies, I see them just say, make it so, right?
Yes. And then it doesn't work that way.
Love to call out to the viewers if they have any views in this space of tech debt versus maybe we say resource inertia. We'd love your comments in the love your ideas in the comments below. Dr. Rishni Ratnam, would you like to talk to us a little bit about MXA and maybe first thing AI?
Yeah, love to. There's two sides to MXA that are probably worth talking about. There's the side of what we do, and then there's the side of our mission. What we do is solve strategic problems at the intersection of business and technology. We try and go everywhere from like the big top level decisions, what are we going to do and what are we not going to do, right down through to getting our hands dirty in implementation, but only from a sort of showing what good looks like perspective. We're not a huge firm. We don't want to be armies of people. We just want to show people the sort of better ways of doing things. And so we do a lot of that sort of strategic work for governments and sort of generally sort of regulated industries because we have a lot of expertise in organizations that require a lot of rigor, what they do and accountability. So that's the surface level of what MXA is as a business. what MXA is as a mission, on the other hand, is that consulting firms, almost all of them, are built on a pyramid scheme of leverage. They make their money by having some partner who shows up, sells something, and then is never seen again, so that an army of graduates can be sold in at a day rate at 4 times whatever their salary is. This is how most consulting firms make money. Yep. Let me just set aside the fact that I find that horrid, but that's how they make money. It's very obvious to me that AI will destroy that business model, because the armies of graduates that you're selling in for $1,000 a day aren't doing anything that AI can't do for, 20 cents per million tokens. So like once you eliminate that layer of armies of people, what is left for the business model of a consulting firm? And actually, what is the actual value proposition that a consultant provides? We actually had to ask that question. So what MXA is in mission is, what is the future of consulting? If I was uncapping how I could use AI from a business model perspective, obviously not from an ethical perspective, from a business model perspective, how should I use it in a firm should provide the sort of value that a consultant should provide, whether that be sort of the business therapy kind of value, or the holding the client's hands through difficult things, and all the things that I genuinely believe consultants provide value.
Yeah.
But what should that value be in the context of selling labor? That's what MXA is at a sort of a mission level. And that sort of leads into first thing. First thing is just our kind of vision for a SaaS product that consulting firms can use, but they can move forwards into the future as well.
It's an excellent. Wow. AI is a massive and engaging topic. I really enjoyed my time with you this afternoon. Very engaging speaker, and I really love your ideas and your insights. Thank you so much for sharing them with us all. Would you be open to joining us again in the future?
Love to.
That was PiqueAI interviewing a human, Dr. Rishni Ratnam, CEO of MXA Consulting, in February 2025. If you enjoyed the discussion and want to hear more from industry leaders, innovators, and experts, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're a leader with a compelling story or expertise to share, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us here at PiqueAI in the comments so we can feature you in one of our upcoming videos. Chat you later.